Harrison Price for Thursday, February 20th, 2025. Coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sakaris with Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. And first, we told you on Tuesday that we'd be off for a couple of days here, back on Friday to recap the Four Nations final. And, of course, the Canucks getting back at it in Vegas and Utah on the weekend. But, partner,
news.
So much has happened. Everything is happening. Yet again, everything is happening. So we're back here with kind of an emergency show, a different show. No guests today. It's just going to be the two of us. Want to make sure you have plenty of time to take the show in and see puck drop at 5 o'clock. Join us at Greta. What's up?
Is there a metric? Like, are the Canucks the newsiest team of the past 3 seasons in the NHL?
Oh, my goodness.
Like, they've got the heavyweight belt, don't they, for news?
Oh, I think so.
Like, who even comes close? The Senators?
I mean, so, like, a Leaf farts and it makes news. When I worked in Toronto, we used to say the same thing. Like,
I mean,
my
actual
God,
news. Actual news.
No, the Vancouver Canucks are absolutely league-wide the newsmakers. I mean, think of how boring this league would be without the Vancouver Canucks. So, much has happened. We'll start with the captain and our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Did you want to see Quinn Hughes playing for Team USA in the Four Nations final? We used past tense here, partner, because at the time we're recording this, he is not playing for Team USA. But I'm open to all possibilities here, the way this thing has come off the rails. Give me your take. Did you want to see him tonight in that USA sweater?
Well, let's be clear. Team USA has had their morning skate. They've said they've got a full, healthy lineup. So unless things drastically change, he's not making the trip across. That was part of the calculus here. He's not going to Boston and then all the way down to Las Vegas to meet with the Vancouver Canucks to not play a hockey game. So
hey, if Jake Sanderson gets the sniffles at lunch, I think Trump's going to send Space Force to bring Quinn Hughes to the Boston Garden.
Potentially, yes, yeah. Did I want to see him in a vague sense? Yes, but I think the NHL. As much as we joke about the fact that they've been making up the rules as they go, and to a degree they did on what happens when you get below your roster, they never got to that point. They never got to the point where they had less than 6 skaters available to them. So, I understand.
Defensemen. That's the other thing we learned yesterday. We thought they could dip below 18 skaters and bring them in, but no, it actually had to be defensemen.
You're right. So there is no reason for them to need him, and so he can't play. So, intrinsically, yes, I wanted to see him play, but I understand why he's not.
As a partisan and a Canadian, my answer is no. He would have been terrifying to watch in another team's jersey. We've had the good fortune of watching this young man through his career, and we know what he can do to the opposition. I would have hated to have been on the receiving end of that. As a competitor and someone who believes they wholly got the rules, the roster rules wrong here, then my answer is yes. And Quinn himself mentioned he thought they would change the roster rules and do it a little differently for the next international tournament. We've talked about it for the last week here. See no reason why you couldn't bring 25. John Shannon told us that Team USA was lobbying the NHL and the NHLPA to bring 25 for exactly these scenarios of players going down. I even am okay with addressing a 13th forward and a 7th defenseman so that nobody has any excuses. Then nobody has to play shorthanded.
Most of these rules will be the case for the next two.
I sure hope so. For the of course, they don't set the Olympic rules. That's the IIHF, but they do set the rules for this upcoming World Cup. So let's hope and trust that they change, because this has been It's been imprecise, and frankly, it hasn't been most professional. It hasn't, Darren Dreger's story about, the NHL and the NHLPA, like wondering where Thomas Harley is at a Canadian morning skate at the Canadiens practice facility in Brossard. Like, is he behind a curtain? Is he behind a wall? Is he near the bench? Is he too close to the bench?
Who's he talking to?
Okay. It's just so ridiculous, right?
Yes,
like, honestly, we're talking like a few feet to the left or the right would have made the difference for the NHL, and NHLPA is just nonsensical. The daily poll question, a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi, and at Surrey Mitsubishi, they want to get EP40 back on top. Everybody at the dealership and beyond rallying behind the hometown hero. Every time EP40 scores a point, you save $500 the next day on any new or used vehicle. If he gets 2 points, you can go into Surrey Mitsubishi and save $1,000 the next day. If he gets 5 points, you guessed it, $2,500 in saves. You just got to mention Harrison Price, and that offer is valid until the next game day. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more, more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey. Let's get to our top story. Quinn Hughes wanted to play for Team USA, but the Canucks said no. He was not medically cleared, despite graduating from a non-contact jersey Tuesday at practice to full practice on Wednesday. He admitted that he had only skated 3 times in the 20 days and also said on Tuesday, quote, the medical team would like me to take it step by step the next couple of days. Our top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. According to The Athletic, this is Mike Russo and Chris Johnson on the reporting, Team USA called Quinn Hughes late Monday night, asked if he wanted to join the team. He said yes. And that's what prompted head coach Mike Sullivan, the former Canucks assistant, to announce it to reporters on Tuesday, saying Quinn Hughes is on the way. The Canucks either didn't know of the request or had yet to give that request the green light. We learned that Quinn had spent some of his off time in New Jersey, that he flew back to Vancouver, and that the Canucks did not want him on a plane to Boston, especially if he wasn't going to be able to play. And let's remember, it was the Vancouver Canucks, if not this administration, that taught us all about travel and air miles flown and the tax and toll that takes on a hockey player's body, particularly when you're making these long flights from the Canadian West Coast. More from The Athletic. While Hughes was willing to come to Boston even if he couldn't play, just to support his American teammates, including brother Jack Hughes, it's clear the Canucks didn't want Hughes to fly across the continent. Wow. So, clearly Mike Sullivan was ahead of himself here, Blake, when he said he was en route. Did Sullivan's presumptuousness piss off the Canucks who kiboshed it? Jim Rutherford likes to be a boss. What do you think?
I mean, I understand the Canucks side of things here. The guy's barely been on skates for 3 weeks. And his first time really back on skates is going to be against the best players in the world in the highest intensity game we've seen in a decade. Like, the Canucks just got back into a playoff spot before the break, and now their most prized possession is putting himself on the line with, a core muscle injury that really guides how he works. I mean, he needs his core to be solid to be Quinn Hughes. So I get it. And never mind the rules part that I talked about around the poll question. From a purely selfish Canucks standpoint, no, you don't want to play in this game. I mean, they've got a big stretch of the schedule, especially when you put it into the context of the trade deadline. And what are these guys? Who is this team? The Canuck brass are trying to make heads and tails of that. Yeah. And without a healthy Quinn Hughes, I mean, my goodness, can you imagine the calculus that they would have to try to make?
I also wonder whether there was a chilling effect from the Charlie McAvoy injury. Not that he got hurt, because players get hurt, But with the Boston Bruins being some upset at the medical treatment that McAvoy received at the hands of USA Hockey. Let's remember, this was a shoulder injury that turned into an infection, right? So it's clear the Bruins view that second part, the infection, as preventable and are mighty disappointed, and they've got a right to be, missing a player of the caliber of Charlie McAvoy for potentially the rest of the regular season. We'll see how he gets over his injury and his infection. So you wonder if there was a chilling effect in conjunction with him not being on skates that often, Blake, as you note, in conjunction with this being the highest of intensity games. Now, all that said, we are not very far removed from the JT Miller trade and the unanimous sentiment amongst Canucks fans that they must now do everything in their power to build around Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson, but mostly to keep Quinn happy and make sure that he re-signs with the Vancouver Canucks in a couple of years when he is eligible. He did not speak to media yesterday, Blake, and typically players who full practice speak to media. He had spoke to media the previous day. Is that in any way ominous to you?
I think he was probably going to wait until the last second. Again, get word that night, get word maybe even early this morning from Team USA on the health of the team. He doesn't want to go out and say something and then find out an hour later, no, Sanderson's got the flu, we need you. So I think he probably said, you know what, it's too second to second right now. I'm not going to put myself into the crosshairs. So I get that to some degree. I think that the attitude that they had, and it was a Jack Hughes quote before when he originally bowed out of the tournament back on February 10th or whatever it was. Jack Hughes said, "We talked about it. We're disappointed, but we both plan on having long careers, and this is not going to be the last time we get the chance to play together on Team USA." So, they had a great perspective on it back then. Obviously, they didn't probably foresee the tournament being as intense as it is. But ultimately, I think that sentiment is still rattling around in both of their brains.
Yeah.
And this isn't going to be the last time.
Yeah, I can buy that with regards to not wanting to say something that, an hour later, whatever the shelf life is, turns out not to be true. But something fundamentally changed here. That much is clear because initially the Vancouver Canucks left the decision up to Quinn Hughes. Mm-hmm. And it's also clear that yesterday, if you believe the reporting, and I certainly do, that they dropped the hammer and made the decision for him.
I think there's some semantics there too, though. I think you can lean heavily without dropping the hammer. Like you can, if you're the Vancouver Canucks, you can say, "Listen, Quinn, you got to go cross continent once. You got to go cross continent twice to come meet us in the thing. You haven't been on the ice for they could go through the laundry list of the facts here and say what are we doing here?" And then sort of, you could say it's guilt tripping, but ultimately it's just laying out the facts. And then Quinn Hughes can just hear the tone and say, yeah, okay, all right. So where along the spectrum that was in terms of just leaning on him a little bit and saying, Quinn, hello, or you're not going, I don't know.
Here's what I'll say, Blake, in terms of leaning on him. Good thing Francesco Aquilini, Jim Rutherford, Rick Tocchet, and Adam Foote are Canadian then, huh? Here's Quinn before the break. Quote, "Really, what it came down to, I just wasn't healthy enough where I wasn't sure that I could get worse. I felt like I couldn't be crawling back to Vancouver at the end of that tournament where now I'm missing more Canucks game. If there's a positive, I should be ready to go the next game against Vegas. But in saying that, if I didn't have to worry about any of that other stuff, I would have been there in a second and played with what I got. But I have to look at the big picture."
And that stands true
Basically,
today.
You can hang him on his own words if you're doing the guilt trip leaning, right? Hey, crawling back to Vancouver.
Right.
Quinn, we don't want you crawling back to Vancouver. And look, it's a little awkward if they clear him to play in this Vegas game, right? I know Thursday and Saturday is 48 hours, and that could be enough time, but it's a little awkward there. boy, I sure hope the next time we hear from Quinn Hughes that there's not any kind of hint of regret or disappointment or anger or frustration in anything that happened here over the last 24, 36 hours, because I, like everybody else, believe maintaining Quinn Hughes in a happy place with the Vancouver Canucks is job number one now for this franchise. Let me throw this at you. Somebody in my mentions tossed it out. I'm not sure I 100% buy it, but I could see it. Do you think this was psyops from Team USA? That Mike Sullivan knows that Quinn Hughes may or may not play for his team, but he's throwing that out there to get John Cooper and his staff busy preparing for a Team USA that has Quinn Hughes on the back end?
I think that's overstating what that would do to John Cooper and his staff. Would they take note of it? Sure. But it doesn't rewrite their entire day of how they're going to coach Team Canada. I mean, you
don't think it changes the penalty kill meeting in terms of, okay, here's what we got to do with it being Zach Werenski as opposed to Quinn Hughes?
Sure, but that's a 10-minute note in that penalty killing meeting. Like, it does not mess with their entire day. You're not going to rewrite your entire day of preparation because Quinn Hughes is coming. You would talk about it. You would have a note to the players on it, but this isn't a game. This isn't 7 games of a Stanley Cup final where you're adjusting every day to that player who keeps scorching you. And how do we stop him? He got us for a goal and an assist yesterday. Like, this is one game. And you're also working with the best players in the world. You're not worried about how Nils Åman is going to do if he finds himself out there against Quinn Hughes. You do ultimately have to trust the 18 skaters that you've chosen to be out there. They are the best in the world. You have to trust that they're going to be okay if they come nose to nose with Quinn Hughes at some point.
There we go. Lastly, of course, Bill Guerin had been lobbying for Donald Trump to attend the game in Boston tonight. Well, Premier Trump weighed in and said he couldn't attend. He would be with the governors, but he said he would be calling the U.S. team on Thursday morning.
Spent 5 minutes with the team. Noah Hannafin says we have to go out and win this game now for our country and for Trump. Mm-hmm. Most disappointedly, though, Matt, the tweet from Donald Trump.
Oh, my God.
Was again calling for Canada to be annexed as the 51st state. It was retweeted, then quote tweeted, by former Canadian men's national team player PK Subban, who tweeted his excitement that Trump might one day take over this country.
Hey. Okay.
Let that be it for PK Subban.
What are our friends at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood up to these days?
A proud Canadian business.
Indeed. Port Moody, British Columbia.
Yellow Dog Playdead IPAs are on special for the month of February. These are the tall can 4-packs. Look for it on sale at private and government liquor stores. Hey, a Playdead tonight, it's a robust beer, shall we say, Matt? Yeah, it'll get you where you need to go rather quickly. It's a good choice for tonight.
Agreed. As for the game itself, in goal for the Americans, Connor Hellebuck of the Canadian Winnipeg Jets. In goal for Canada, Jordan Binnington of the American St. Louis Blues. Your captains tonight, Austin Matthews for Team USA from the Canadian Toronto Maple Leafs. Sidney Crosby for Canada from the American Pittsburgh Penguins. The referees, Gord Dwyer of Dalhousie, New Brunswick, and Chris Rooney of Boston, Massachusetts. And Blake, whether it's Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid and Mitch Marner, somebody's going to win something pretty big tonight. Somebody who has been dogged by a reputation of falling short when it matters the most is going to get a chance to lift the trophy and celebrate here this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. On the referee note, do you not bring in a European referee for this game?
I know, I thought that too. So, folks, here's why. The NHL players loathe playing in games without NHL referees. They are accustomed to a standard that, while it may differ a little bit from referee to referee, is pretty established across the National Hockey League. When you bring in those double IHF officials, they typically referee different sorts of games domestically in Europe and apply that standard to the NHL players. And so I think you have, if not unanimity, then at least consensus amongst NHL stakeholders that when their teams or when their players play, even if it's in national team jerseys, that it should be NHL referees to maintain the standard and level of play that they are accustomed to. I hear what you're saying. If you assign a Finn and a Swede to this game, then nobody is looking, eyebrow raised at any of the calls here tonight. I sure hope and trust that Gord Dwyer and Chris Rooney will call it as they see it without any kind of hint of allegiance or nationalism.
I thought there was the odd European official in the NHL. As I check now from the roster of the 23-24 season, there are no European referees or linesmen working in the National Hockey League currently. So, or as of 23-24 at the very least. So,
yeah. And honestly, some of that goes for the fans too, because how many times do we hear people complaining out of World Juniors, out of World Championships about the officiating and, how is that a penalty and how did they miss? Anyways, Gord Dwyer, Chris Rooney, one Canadian, one American, your officials this evening. Here's the other big piece of news over the last 48 hours. Thatcher Demko.
Would be American goaltender, by the way.
Would have at least been the backup, we think, tonight, had he been healthy and performing. Although, Ottinger, he's good too. Swayman's good too. Thatcher Demko, week to week with a lower body injury. It is not the knee, the popliteus, that has given him so much trouble. The Canucks saying he will be reevaluated when the team returns from their road trip. And folks, if you're unaware, it's a 5-game road trip facing the Vancouver Canucks here. They are in Vegas. They are in Utah on the weekend. They are in Southern California mid-next week against the Ducks and the Kings. And then they come back up to face their geographic rivals, if nothing more, in the Seattle Kraken before starting the next homestand. So, Kevin Lankinen, just back from the Four Nations himself, where he played for Finland, and Artur Shilovs, who has been recalled, going to carry the mail for the Canucks. And because it's 2 sets of back-to-backs, Blake, I suspect we will see both goaltenders at least a couple of times on this road trip.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see, who goes and, if there's good performances. Do they consider going with all these back-to-backs coming up, even after the road trip too? Like, how is it all handled? We'll see. Kevin Lankinen is going to be busy, and if he's good, he's going to be extra busy. So that's going to be an interesting decision-making process throughout the next few weeks here for the Canucks coaching staff. How hard do they ride Kevin Lankinen if he's playing well, especially? And then when Thatcher Demko comes back, it's still probably going to be I would say a slow build for his workload again for Demko. So if I'm Kevin Lankinen, I'm doing my stretching because he's going to be playing a lot of hockey here coming up.
Yeah. Same token, the Canucks found their game, lest we forget, towards the end there before the season pause. In fact, you could argue that this pause has done the club no favors. They were 6-1-1 in the 8 games prior to the season pausing and had gotten back to some of that stout defensive play that we had become accustomed to with Rick Tocchet hockey in his first full season. They give up just the 1 goal to the Leafs, just the 1 goal to the Sharks. They shut out the Colorado Avalanche. So that's their last 3 games before the break. So it was very good defensive work from the Canucks and their goaltenders. Now, I know some people are all over the Vancouver Canucks for dishonesty when it comes to injury reporting. And yes, there are examples that you can point to and say the Canucks did not tell the truth there. I mean, we told you this going back to what Miller and Pettersson said in December about their relationship, right? People in official places lie. That's just how the world works now. Talk had said he didn't believe it was serious from the early reports immediately after the Toronto game. Of course, Demko left 10 minutes in against the Leafs. Head coaches oftentimes don't have all the information before them in the moments after a game. And as Talk had noted, it was an early report, so clearly something went wrong here beyond the initial, or something was discovered, or something developed over the initial diagnosis in game, and Thatcher's going to miss more time. There are all sorts of offshoots to that for the Vancouver Canucks, not just in the immediate term, as Blake just outlined, but long term. And so while this is asking a lot of both Lankinen and perhaps Shelovs as well, Canucks are going to get some information on their goaltending and what to do for next year, huh? Re-sign Lankinen? Move Demko and re-sign Lankinen?
Matt, if
Shelovs ready to be the number 2? There are all sorts of permutations that could transpire from this point forward, particularly if Thatcher misses more than just these 5 games.
If Lankinen doesn't poop the bed here, if he looks pretty darn good over the course of the next 2.5 weeks when we anticipate that Demko's gone, and I don't know if he can ever be as good as he was early in the season, but my goodness, if he is, Matt, how on earth do you look that guy in the eyes and say, "Yeah, we don't need you for next season"? Like, I don't know, how would you not just objectively come to the conclusion that you need that guy next season?
Especially with Thatcher going into the final year of his contract, right? Like, if you get an uneven or injury-riddled season again from Demko next year, you will absolutely be kicking yourself if you let Lankinen walk.
Yeah. I mean, and for those that are worried about, Thatcher Demko and trade value, if he ultimately is proving to be even more injury-riddled than he is, and I think a little bit about John Gibson. John Gibson still has value out there. People will still roll the dice on a great goalie that's been injury-riddled, hoping that he'll finally find health. So there would still be trade value. In Gibson's
case, it has been multiple years. I mean, I think there's a very good argument that Anaheim Ducks should have traded him several years ago.
Yes,
when his value was much higher than it is here. Yeah. Of course, the Canucks would be under a much tighter window, more of a shotgun trade there with Demko going in the final year. And look, at $5 million, if you believe in the player's health, and you got to believe in the player, right? We'd even starting to see Thatcher Demko come back and look like his old self in the weeks preceding the break for the Four Nations tournament. So no, I look. Would you be trading him at high value? Of course not. Could you still get something for him? Yes.
Yeah.
And some were talking about, when Lankinen supplanted Saros in the Finnish crease, about potential increase to his value, upping his asking price if he performs at the Four Nations. I was a little skeptical, if not dubious, about that. One thing I am not skeptical or dubious about, if he has to carry the mail for the Vancouver Canucks down the stretch and on a playoff run here, and he performs, that will absolutely enhance his value. In fact, you now wonder, Blake, we are 15 days away from the March 7th trade deadline. Does that become a deadline matter for the Canucks? Do they look at it and say, we would really like to get Kevin Lankinen locked up prior to the deadline, so we know what we're able to do in terms of spending for next year if we're going to pay him? Interesting consideration before Patrick Alvin and Jim Rutherford, I think.
It's a pressure point, but of course, you're like, it's not like if you don't sign him or do sign him, it means that you're going to trade Thatcher Demko before the deadline.
You also have months to re-sign him thereafter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not a free agent until July 1st. So, no, it's by no means a deadline. It's a pressure point, and a softer pressure point at that. But, yeah, this management group has in the past shown a desire to know what they're spending the subsequent season. We saw that with Elias Pettersson. He got pressured to the negotiating table to make his deal. They also re-signed Marcus Pettersson, Andrew O'Connor, the 2 acquisitions, both of them rentals, if you will, from the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are now going to be longer-term Vancouver Canucks. It took a little while, but we got the television number for Canada in for Saturday's big game against the U.S. in the round-robin format. 3.8 million watched on Sportsnet, another million or just shy of watched on French television. So they're saying 4.75 million Canadians to go along with the 4.4 million in the United States. So roughly 10 million people watch that game across the border, Blake. And needless to say, 4.75 million is a very healthy number in Canada, and 4.4 million is a mind-blowing number to watch a hockey game in the United States. And even TNT on the USA-Sweden game on, what was that, Monday? Tuesday? Monday. They did 1.8 million for that game, a record for a non-playoff game. So this has had the desired effect of getting people to buy in, people who otherwise wouldn't have watched hockey to buy in and watch. The Rich Eisen show did a full segment on it, Blake. I was watching on NFL Network the other day, and they were talking about, we know what we're doing Thursday. We're hunkering down for this hockey game. So it has been an incredible marketing tool for the sport of hockey. And of course, we haven't reached the peak yet. I mean, if 10 million across both countries watched the game on Saturday, too much. That's like 15 million people
maybe
watching the game here tonight. Maybe even more than that.
Number one hockey fan south of the border is J.J. Watt. We've been talking about him. He said earlier today, it's just incredible how much of a home run Four Nations has been for the NHL and hockey in general. Friends who've never watched a hockey game in their lives are reaching out, asking me what the plan is for tonight's game, what food we're ordering, etc. That's the definition of growing the game. And that's exactly what it is. And those sort of anecdotal bits are everywhere, I think, south of the border. And it's a shame we're so angry at them right now, but it is yes. It is growing the game.
Yeah, good PSA there. We know that this is going to split a lot of families. The allegiance here tonight. Let's let it not split people beyond the 2.5, 3 hours tonight, right? Let's all be friends when all of this is over. So, can't remember the last time. I mean, I guess I'm going to have to go back to the 2014 gold medal game in Sochi, Blake, the middle of the night affair between Canada and Sweden. The last time I was this looking forward to a hockey game. And it may even be beyond that, because you may remember that Swedish team had a ton of injuries. It was the middle of the night in Sochi. We had already won gold. Didn't have the political specter that's going on here tonight. This is absolutely a game for the ages. And as is what's going on at BC Place this weekend, the best party in town and an event unlike any other in Vancouver, celebrating 10 years of the HSBC Sevens. That's right, the electric atmosphere. Experience it yourself. The best teams in the world at BC Place, Friday through Sunday. The HSBC Rugby Sevens. Grab your friends, grab your fancy dress. If you don't know what fancy dress is, Google that. It's quite a sight. 12 women's teams, 15 men's teams, both Canadian squads. They'll all be in action over 3 full days. Single-day tickets on sale now. The Friday tickets starting from $50. For the fan that wants to cram all the fun into one day, the VIP experience, $130 a day. It gives you the best seats in the house, player access, private bar and lounge, in-seat food and beverage. Tickets on sale now, vansevens.com. And we had head coach Sean White of Victoria, the Canadian men's team, on the show last week, wishing best to the Canadian sides playing this week at the Rugby Sevens. We're going to be at Greta tonight at 50 West Cordova. This is not a ticketed event, so it's first come, first seat. Come on down, join us. David Quadrelli's going to get on the mic from Canucks Conversation and Canucks Army. We're going to watch it together because that's also part of the fun of international hockey, right, Blake? You know, for the most part, you know, you watch NHL games within your domestic household. Maybe you go out a couple of times here and gather. Playoffs, you gather a little bit more. I can't ever remember watching a big Canadian hockey game without a big crowd around me.
It's true. One exception, World Cup.
Maybe that middle of the night gold medal game against Sweden, but for the most part, whether it was 2002 in the Olympics, whether it was 2010 in the Olympics, when Canada plays in a best-on-best senior men's event, typically that means watching it with large crowds.
96, I remember just watching it with one buddy, and we looked at each other dumbfounded as the Americans pummeled us. And so that's there we go. There's every reason. The last time that I did it without a group, we lost. With groups, undefeated.
We win. Weekly drink specials, Greta, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Come on down and join us this afternoon to watch this Four Nations final. Okay, buddy, it's time for our Bet365 bets of the day. And the other day, I picked Canada 5-2, correct score, and I was hearkening the 2002 Olympic gold medal game in Salt Lake City where Canada beat the United States 5-2 on U.S. ice. But a friend mentioned to me, Matty, 5-2. Why not 5-1? I go, oh, why not 5-1? He goes, 51st state? How about 5-1? Love it. And that pays even better, plus 2,500.
I'm going to go on the spread. So you can go Canada -1. Good chance of a push here, obviously, but still. Canada -1 is plus 240. And empty net goal possibility in a close game as well. I love that bet. Canada -1 over the United States at plus 240.
Open an account with Bet365 today, bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. And we have more Canadian national team talk coming up here.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where if you have your tickets to the big game, why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Harrison Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. You can text this show, 778-402-9680. Email live at scarsonprice.com. All of it to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
Our friends at Toyota, proudly presenting this segment, Blake.
I had a hockey game with my daughter in Abbotsford Tuesday after the show. And because I had her with me, thankfully I was able to get into the HOV lane. And I can't tell you how much time that must have saved. Just screaming past the parking lot to my right. But if I didn't have her, might have been in trouble. That's why I'm going to get behind the wheel of a BZ4X sometime soon here by Toyota. The Toyota BZ4X will get you into the HOV lane. It'll have you passing all those cars and gas stations. It's a 100% fully electric vehicle with a fabulous cockpit to sit in. It makes you feel like you're in a land speeder. It really does. Go take one for a test drive. You'll fall in love. You'll see the fabulous cargo capacity, great for parking in these tight Vancouver parking spots in every mall that you go to. And right now, you can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives. You can finance one from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Just visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. And your Pacific Toyota dealers also have a little added incentive right now, an exciting contest. The grand prize includes 2 tickets to the Kanika Minolta Champions Club at Rogers Arena for the April 6th game between the Canucks and the Golden Knights, and that's 2 Canucks jerseys thrown in as well, so you'll look resplendent. If you want to win, check out the link in our episode description or follow Toyota Pacific on Instagram and Facebook. That's at Toyota Pacific for your chance to enter. Contest is open only to residents of the BC and the Yukon. Age of majority.
Well, from one senior men's national team to another, this one not Canada's game, but the world's game. The Canadian men's national soccer team announces on Wednesday that they have booked a friendly against Wales September 9th in Swansea. This is number 29 in the world, Wales, from the FIFA rankings against number 31 Canada. And it is part of a European team tour for Jesse Marsh's side. They will play number 38 Romania in Bucharest on September 5th before heading over to Wales on September 9th. And we've talked about our partner that you need to book these sorts of games in the build-up to the 2026 World Cup here in Canada, the United States, and Mexico that you can't just rely on CONCACAF and your side of the hemisphere competitions. And so these should be good tests for the Canadian national side.
Well, also, of course, the world plays a different game than CONCACAF, and so you do have to bring yourself up to speed about the different styles of play. Not everybody plays like CONCACAF does. And, not all games are officiated like CONCACAF games either. So you need to see the world if you're the Canadian men's national team, if you want to prepare yourself for what's coming in Vancouver and Toronto in 2026. So it's fabulous. And they're right in the right wheelhouse. Like, you don't need to book dates with the top 10 teams in the world right now. Try to find some guys sort of at your level, but of the European style of play, and then build yourself up. And I think, at some point, maybe early 2026, you're going to want to book a European, heavyweight just to see where you're at. But this is a good starting point for sure for Canada.
And speaking of Canada, Alphonso Davies with a goal at the death for Bayern Munich to put them past Celtic and into the round of 16 at the UEFA Champions League.
Knocking out Alistair Johnson and Celtic in the process. And Alistair Johnson, I was watching the comments during the game. Like, people are glowing about Alistair Johnson. I see Celtic fans going, we're going to lose Alistair Johnson to a Big Five team.
Wow.
That's pretty cool to see. But that was Davies' first game back from injury. Remember, he's been missing for the last couple of months here. And to see him jump in as a substitute, and he was handed the captain's armband when he came on, by the way, and to get a goal wasn't a scorcher. It was a grimy goal, jumping to the edge of the six there to tuck a loose ball in. But he was really forward and thinking scoring, and that's not usually where he is for Bayern. So fun to see, and it means that Bayern's still alive here in Champions League.
Yeah, it means Davies is still alive, and he joins his buddy Jonathan David, who is still alive for Lille, the French side, in the UEFA Champions League. Whitecaps get going tonight with their first competitive play in 2025. Yeah. It begins tonight for Vancouver Whitecaps FC. They're in Costa Rica against old friend, ex-cap Kendall Waston and Deportivo Saprissa. Now, sadly,
former Whitecap Christian Bolaños is a coach there too, so it's a couple of Whitecaps connections.
Now, sadly, this game
what time's that on?
Right at the same time as the hockey game. One Soccer, Fubo TV, and Telus Channel 980.
I would say it's a great 2 TV night, except I think one TV will just get ignored.
One of these things is not like the other. MLS regular season play begins Sunday. The Caps are in Portland to face the Timbers. Of course, they slapped them around 5-0 in that wild card playoff victory down at Providence Park last year. So home opener a week from Sunday against the LA Galaxy here at BC Place. Okay. Time now for our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Tuesday. We asked you, which gamble are you willing to make on Elias Pettersson? Trade him at low value or hope he improves? What did the people say, Blake?
I think they're still hoping he improves.
Indeed. Percentage?
58.
It's 65.
65, okay.
Darren says, Matt, at this point, you wait until next year and hope someone gets through to him and he trains his ass off so his frail and weak frame catches up with his God-given talent. Salt and Paprika says at over $11 million per year, the risk is keeping him. No more Erickson 2.0. And then our buddy JC, he needs an offseason of training, both mental and physical. I understand the gamble in keeping him because his no trade clause kicks in the offseason, but a talent like his is absolutely worth the risk. And here's the thing. If you don't get a number one centerman back, and the likelihood is you will not get a number one centerman back, then you're on the market for a number one centerman. And they are so difficult to acquire. Heck, you could be on the market for a number one and a number two centerman if this trade doesn't return one. Interesting days ahead for the Vancouver Canucks. A couple of errors and omissions from Tuesday's program. I called Deportivo Saprissa a Mexican side, no, a Costa Rican side. And we cited that Daily Beast article with Bill Guerin talking about 51st State in quotations. He did, in fact, not mention 51st State, at least not by name, in the Fox News interview that he conducted that the Daily Beast was working off, so we apologize for that error. He did mention today, though, that President Trump mentioned 51st State in his phone call with Guerin and the American team.
Which is an odd thing to bring up because, again, half the roster that's in that room hearing that would not be there if we became the 51st State because they would no longer be of the quality to make that team. So it's an odd thing to be cheering on with the wait till we bring these guys in, then you won't be on this team. What?
I was going to say, if we're melding national teams here, I like our chances in Milano Cortina.
Let's not go there.
Here's the Guerin full quote from today. He said on 51st State wasn't mentioned a little bit, but I would just try and focus on the message that he was giving us. I've said it before. We're here to play hockey. This is not a political forum. This is a hockey tournament. And he's just trying to be supportive in the best way that he could. And we appreciate
the best way that he could.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's not a political forum. Bill, bless your heart. I mean, if that's how you want to look at it, fair enough. But there are a lot of people on the outside looking in who do view this through a political prism. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. And again, this was a bit of an emergency show. We weren't planning to do this, but just so much has happened here. So no guests today. We'll get back to guests tomorrow. In fact, as a matter of fact, we're going to have JPAD is back on the Canucks beat. Frank Corrado is going to break down the game for us.
Mm-hmm.
And WWE champion Chelsea Green of Victoria is going to join us on Friday's program. Looking forward to it. We appreciate your support. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's Insta. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. Most days, of course. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.
Enjoy the game.
Keep it Canadian.